Hello, greetings. My name is Mary and welcome back to My Merry Ways. Today we're continuing on with the reading of my book and we're hopping right into it. Chapter 1. So the video right before this, I read the introduction and the prologue, and now we're going to explore Chapter 1. There are 23 chapters in this book, and just a quick recap, I published this about 10 years ago. At the time, I was in my lower 30s and I was single. I did not have children, and life then is very different than now. But a lot of the lessons that I learned back then, I have totally applied now, and they've gotten me to where I am today. So let's hop into this. Chapter 1 begins with a little story. Actually, all these chapters start with a story. And after I read this to you, we will discuss it a little bit, all right? The name of the chapter is Complacency and Entitlement, Not My Lifestyle. I enjoy setting high goals for myself and doing my best to reach them. What I don't enjoy is listening to other people complain about where they are in life. Frequently, I find these people complain, but don't have any plans to achieve new goals in order to improve their circumstances. What's worse, they don't see this. See, there's a difference between having a goal and having a sense of entitlement. A goal is something you actively work towards. Entitlement is a terrible trait, and it's a goal stopper. If you feel you're entitled to something, why set any goals? You assume you'll automatically get the next big break. Why work at it? Frequently, entitlement attitudes lead to complacency. Don't be one of those entitleds. They suck. They suck to be around, and they sound like broken records. So if this is you, stop now. If this isn't you, good, don't start. I never considered myself to be a competitive person. Yeah, you read that correctly. I was taught to be the best I could be, and my mom constantly reminded me that nobody's better than you, and you're no better than anybody. When I was younger, I thought this was untrue, because I understood it materially. I lived in a beautiful home. I'd occasionally volunteer to help the less fortunate. I also spent time gazing in awe at the glamorous, humongous, these should never have been for only one family-sized mansions. Of course, that's not what I thought about those homes at the time. In my head, I reduced the situations of others too. Those people in their huge homes are a billion times better off than I am, and the homeless people don't have it as well as I do. Therefore, in my simple, literal, undeveloped mind, I was in my early teens. My mom's saying was obviously untrue. But now that I'm older, I get it. It's about the human soul. It's about how God sees us, how He created us. We're all different, and our decisions, circumstances, lifestyles will shape us into who we become. That being said, I still don't consider myself to be a competitive person. If I'm doing something to the very best of my ability, and I'm constantly improving or trying to improve myself, then I do feel like I'm living a full, enriched life. If I let someone else down, I feel awful. But if I let myself down, I feel worse. That may sound very selfish, but let me break it down. I do not intentionally let other people down. I know decisions I make from time to time may have consequences that will negatively affect others, but that is never the intent. And if I do let someone else down, then I in turn let myself down. I know my fullest potential. No one else does. If I'm not giving something my all, then in my head, I have failed. Status quo or grow is a brilliant quote. The quote refers to a continuous improvement, or as the Japanese call it, kaizen. It can and should apply to every aspect of life. I continuously improve myself and compete with what I am versus what I can be. Okay, so maybe I am slightly competitive, but it isn't competitiveness against others. That isn't to say that if I'm approaching the finish line of a race and there's someone at my heels, I won't throw down the hammer to ensure I'm not passed. A remarkable and fascinating aspect of human life is seeing what can stem from a little confidence and encouragement. Each support can bring about a new development in a special area, and in my case, it's mathematics. My father has a mechanical engineering and business background. My mom has a volunteering, management, and medical assistant background. Mom hates math, Dad excels at it. When I started learning multiplication, I recall using the flashcard method, the trick with your fingers when multiplying by the number 9, and of course using that table where you follow one number down and another number over to get your answer. I also recall hating math, absolutely loathing it. I felt so insecure. The fact that my mom hated it too made me feel like, it's okay, I don't have to love math, she's doing well, and when will I ever use math? At least those crazy complex problems. When I entered 8th grade, I was put into a packed math class taught by Mr. Sinkus. Seating was in alphabetical order, and I felt so blessed when my seat fell to the right side, the last seat of the row. I was perfectly situated to be overlooked so I could continue my love affair with hating math. To me, I was already doing my best in other classes, and math, well, I had no interest, so I didn't know what my best or worst was. I was pretty much only going through the absolute minimum motions, and most of the answers to the homework were in the back of the book. Plus, based on the syllabus, if one did well on homework and average on tests and pop quizzes, you could receive a C. A C is average. I was okay with average. Again, we're talking about math, and in math, I'd gladly take the average. My 8th grade math teacher, Mr. Sinkus, was not happy to give me the average, nor did he want me to continue my love affair with hating math. How do I know? It must have started after I got called on several times to answer homework questions, and I'd give the right answer, sort of. When I had to prove how I got the answer, I flopped. I had no response. My face would get red. The people in front of me would turn around with these huge grins across their faces, just waiting for me to mess up. Wait no longer. I was always messing up. Quizzes and tests proved that I did not know what I was doing, not to mention the eraser shavings that littered my desk and the floor around me as an additional giveaway. One day, as I was shamefully walking out of my math class, Mr. Sinkus stopped me. My heart dropped. Immediately, I assumed I was in trouble for copying out the back of the book and subsequently not delivering proper responses in class discussions. I knew he was about to either report me to the principal or ream me out himself. I was one of the last people to leave class that day, and I was very thankful that not many people witnessed my summonsing. I looked up, terrified, and saw Mr. Sinkus standing over his desk, which was conveniently right next to the classroom door. He had a concerned look about him, but a warm smile. I shuffled over, backpack pulling on my back. I tried to stand up straight and look somewhat confident. Inside, though, I felt like a complete failure. I knew I was not giving math my 100%. I knew it because not only did I have little interest in improving math, but I have to admit it made me uncomfortable not to do well at this subject. "You wanted to see me?" I asked Mr. Sinkus. Oh, God, I felt so ashamed of myself. "Yes, that's right." Long pause. "Mary, I believe you have the ability to do math well, and I want to prove it to you." I replied with shock in my voice. "Really? My dad is good at math, he's an engineer, and I don't always go to him when I need help." Suddenly, I transported myself back to a few nights prior. I was sitting at the kitchen counter with my math book open, flipping the huge chunks of pages back and forth that were in my way between the problem and the answer. I would jot down whatever I could in order to try to reach the answer, even working backwards to try to solve it. Then, frustrated to the point of tears, I'd planned to save it for when my dad got home from work. But sometimes by the time he came home, I wanted to do other things, like play on the computer or go outside, so I'd simply copy the answer from the back of the book and forget my frustration. Well, until the next homework assignment. Mr. Sinkus elaborated, "Mary, I recommend you start sitting with your father at night to go over homework assignments. In addition, I'm going to start giving you extra problems to do, and you and I will go over them either before school starts or during your lunch, maybe twice a week or so," he continued. Upon hearing this, I didn't think, great, more work. Instead, I thought, this is what I need. Plus, I'll get an A in this class because I'll have Mr. Sinkus as a resource to teach me how to do these problems correctly. Math, after all, is simply a ton of templates, but they call them equations, and you drop in the numbers and go from there. Yes, I've simplified it, but that's basically math, right? I responded enthusiastically, "Thank you. That's a good plan." And with that, he wrote down a couple of extra problems to do from the chapter with instructions to come back tomorrow at lunch to review. I talked to my dad over dinner that night, and he reminded me that he's always been available to help. In fact, he was disappointed in me for not taking my time with him before to review problems carefully. When we sat down that night, things changed. I had my heavy math book open on the kitchen table, and to the right of it, my notebook. To the left of my math book sat my dad. What happened that night began a series of repeated behavior. As soon as I would get frustrated, I'd try to flip to the back of the book. My dad wouldn't let me. He wanted to take his time with the problem and show me how to get to the answer, not just grab it from the back of the book. While writing out the problem, he'd ask me out loud, if we know that x plus z is equal to 28.8 and y divided by z is equal to 4, we should be able to fill in for the y, right? My response, no, we shouldn't, which eventually heightened to pure frustration. I hate this, I don't get it. And predictably, crying would ensue. Burying the right side of my head into my right hand, my arm on the counter, I would sit there and cry. Yeah, I threw some temper tantrums, that's for sure. However, Dad never let me totally walk away. I could slam the book shut, I could rip out that paper from my notebook and violently crumple it up into a ball, and he would let me sit there and stew. I could threaten to walk away or even try walking away, but he'd call me back again. In moments where I was hysterically angry, I'd get a break with the understanding that we'd be coming back to that math book in 15 minutes or so. What my dad saw then, which I see now, is that the passion I was showing was a fear of failure that needed serious encouragement and confidence. The only way I could get encouragement was to have a support system, and in this case, it was Dad and Mr. Sinkus. The only way I could get confidence from proving to myself that I could succeed. In time and through a lot of practice and dedication, I turned my math grade around. I would actually raise my hand to answer math questions when Mr. Sinkus called upon the class. Now, when the students turned around, they weren't giving me those awful looks. Instead, they were looking at me as though I was a smart, capable math student, and it felt wonderful. After 8th grade, I looked forward to math classes. In fact, I was placed in advanced business statistics during my undergraduate studies. I also passed out of several math courses throughout the years because I scored very highly on my ACT math section. I give my dad a lot of credit for this turnaround, but I also hold Mr. Sinkus in very high regards. He was the first teacher who noticed a certain affinity between math and myself. I left that school in New York after 8th grade, and much later in life, I always wanted to thank him and tell him of my accomplishments. My decision to pursue finance would not have been made if I was weak in math. Nor would I have experienced ease in my math classes if he hadn't identified my need for encouragement and confidence. Sadly, when I attempted to contact him, I learned that a few years after my class graduated high school, he had a tragic accident and passed away. More recently, I wrote his daughter, a friend of mine in junior high, a letter to express my condolences and the gratitude I still have for her father. I never got a response, but it was important for her to know the role he played in my life. Taking all of this into consideration, I gave my undergraduate and graduate courses my best. I never had the goal to become number one in my class. My goal was to do my very best always, and if my very best was a C+, then that definitely was a disappointment, but I could say that I gave it my best. And no one can get 100% in everything. No one. There's not one person who is an expert at everything. I repeat that constantly when I think I should be so good at A, B, C, and D. No, I am one person, just like a heart doctor is normally not also a dermatologist. We each have our specializations, soar in those, and learn as much as you can and want to about other areas. And always, always, always walk with confidence. As my brother likes to say, confidence is sexy. When you are falling apart inside or feel insecure and your environment demands you look pulled together and secure, do not show how you're really feeling. There's a time and a place for every emotion. What I learned from my math studies, struggles and successes, is that if you are determined and fueled by confidence and encouragement, you can do anything. And you should stop and thank those people who helped you reach your potential along the way, and also once you become successful. Thank you, Mr. Sinkus, and thank you, Dad. I think back to those days when I was struggling. I was struggling so very much, and I felt hopeless. I couldn't understand how I could be so good in other areas at school and just absolutely terrible in math, and it seemed to come so easily for other people. And I don't just relate my struggles in life to math, but I do think back to how it was such a weakness of mine, and I turned it around so it became a strength. And The same thing happened recently with my son too. Automatically said, I don't like math, it is so hard, until we broke it down into very simple terms for him. Instead of saying 3 plus 2, it's, all right, we have 3 dogs named Baxter, and then 2 more Baxters come along. How many do you have? And by turning it more into a story and getting his attention, it really helped make the concept stick, relatable, and easier. It even, I think for him anyway, made it more fun. And the lesson here is to just don't give up. We're always going to have weaknesses. We're not always going to succeed in every area, but there are core competencies that I do believe we should all have, and we shouldn't just bury those, dismiss them as impossible or avoidable, because they are neither of those things. And like my example with the heart surgeon and dermatology, I love looking up different facts. My background is very strong in negotiation, and that's financially and also legally with contracts. But I love learning about other things. My hobbies include nutrition and working out, and so I spend a lot of time researching those areas as well. And I just believe that you never should stop learning, and anything that doesn't interest you, like whatsoever, I think that that is fine. But if you're using that as an excuse to hold you back, I don't think that that part is fine. So that's a little bit of my feedback on this chapter. I would love your comments. I'd love to know what you think. Maybe a story about when you turned something around, or maybe advice that you've given others, or maybe you're the teacher in this story. Maybe you're the Mr. Sinkus, where you saw a student needed some help. You identified that. You saw the potential. I want to hear about it, because those teachers, those people in our lives are so important. And we may see it at the time, but I often find that it's far into the future when it starts clicking and you realize, oh my gosh, that person was so impactful on me. And thank that person. So if you are one of those people, thank you. Thank you for noticing potential in others. Thank you for going out of your way to help people who struggle. I'm getting a little emotional because I have been there. So thank you. And as always, thank you so much for watching my channel. Stay tuned, because I've got 22 more chapters of stuff just like this. Thank you so much.